Hello and welcome to my video where I'm going to show you how to make a fluffy star wreath and also a yarn wrapped candy cane. As the base, I'm going to be using the wire forms that I made in my previous video. However, if you don't want to make them, there are plenty available in shops to buy that are the same or very similar. For the star wreath, I'm going to be using a very simple copper wire frame. To wrap this frame, I bought a 100% merino wool top, or wool roving as it's often called. I chose a nice candy floss pink colour and I used nearly 100 grams. The first thing you need to do is approximately find the centre of the wool. Then you need to loosely tie it onto the frame. We're going to wrap one strand of this wool in one direction and the other strand in the other direction. So I'm now going to wrap the left-hand strand of wool. You need to form the wool into a loop that sits inside the shape, making sure that it goes underneath the wire frame. Then put your hand through the loop from underneath and pull the rest of the wool through. This will add one stitch or one knot of wool onto the frame. The tighter these knots are, the thinner the star shape will be, and the looser these knots, the thicker the star shape will be. The main thing is to try and keep them consistent throughout. And you just carry on like this all the way around. So once again, form a loop in the wool, so that the loop passes underneath the wire frame and into the centre of the shape. Take your hand up through that loop and pull through the rest of the wool. Then tighten the knot. And that's all there is to it, just repeat that very simple step. If, like me, you're using a single strand of copper wire for the structure, you might find that it does deform a little bit when you tighten the knots, but it's very easy to reshape. Once you've used up one strand of the wool, move on to the other one and do exactly the same in the opposite direction. The reason for using two strands of wool is that then we don't have to deal with so much wool at once. Once you've wrapped the entire frame, it's time to remove the excess wool. If you just cut wool roving with scissors, it creates a very harsh line and a very obvious join. So what I like to do is just pull the roving, like so, to break it apart. This creates a softer edge and a much more subtle join. You can then tuck the end into a couple of knots on the back of the star shape, or, if like me you have a needle felting needle, you can use that to attach the end of the wool. All you need to do is basically repeatedly stab the end of the strand of roving, like so that it blends into the back of the star shape, trying to avoid the wire frame. Basically all you're doing is just tangling up the wool fibres. I also added a hanging loop. And that's it, the star wreath is now completed. I'm personally not going to, but if you wanted to add some fairy lights as well, you could just weave them into the wool, like so. And now I'm going to move on to show you how to make the yarn wrapped candy cane decoration. As before, I'm using a wire form as the base, which I made in my previous video. If you're looking to buy the wire form instead of make it, then I think the best place to look would be Etsy. You will then need some super bulky yarn to wrap the form with, and also some super glue and some scissors. You'll also want to protect your work surface from the glue, and to do this I just used some scrap plastic. You can see that the wire form that I've made is split into sections by wire struts, and I'm going to do a different colour in each of these sections, alternating red and white. So to begin, I apply super glue to the very end of the candy cane, to the top and to the bottom of the wire. Then I take the end of the red yarn and I wrap a short section around where I've applied the super glue. You want the end of the yarn to finish inside the shape, rather than sticking out. We then need to apply super glue to the top and the bottom of the wire in this first section. So that's either side plus the first wire strut. And then you just wrap the red yarn around the wire form until you've filled that first section. The coil of yarn you've already glued onto the form should stop it slipping off. You'll have to start off wrapping horizontally, but as you go on, try and wrap more diagonally so that the strands line up with the wire struts. Once you've reached that first wire strut, it's time to cut off the excess yarn. Make sure you leave enough yarn so that you're able to tuck it inside the shape, preferably by gluing it to the wire strut. We then need to attach the white yarn and continue wrapping it in the same direction. So again, apply super glue to the top and the bottom of the wire all around this next section. Then make sure the start of the yarn is tucked inside the shape and glued to the wire strut. And then continue wrapping diagonally as you did previously. The idea is for the yarn to cover the wire completely and also to line up with those wire struts. The yarn that I'm using is super bulky and is very soft, very much like chenille, and I'm using the same type for both colours. Once you reach the next wire strut, cut off the excess yarn and make sure that the end of the yarn is tucked in securely. Then switch to the red yarn again, and so on for the rest of the shape. Once you get to the top of the shape, it can get more difficult to align the yarn strands with the wire struts. You'll have to try and neatly bunch up the yarn strands on the inside of the shape and try and space them out a bit on the outside of the shape, like so. You just need to try and keep all of the wire covered. Then, when you reach the very last section at the end, you need to do exactly the same as you did at the very beginning. So apply some super glue at the very end, and then you wrap a short section of the red yarn around the glued wire. Finish the section as usual and then leave to dry. To finish the candy cane, I just used some twine to make a hanging loop. And that's it, that's the candy cane completed. I really hope you've enjoyed these projects and thank you very much for watching.